Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Intuitive Living with Suzanne. So, today we are taking a break from the human design series that I've been doing recently, and we're going back to the archetypes again. So, we are on the third core archetype of the four-part series, and today we're going to talk about the child archetype. So, what exactly are archetypes? Again, and I've said this before, archetypes are universal symbolic patterns that are used to explain the nature of the world we live in. The archetypal characters allow us to see patterns and predictability in our lives so that we might understand ourselves and the world around us. This is Suzanne Arjona, and you're listening to Intuitive Living with Suzanne, where we are tuning in to our inner voices and taking life to the next level. So, I've talked about how archetypes show up as characters in our personality, like the hero, the explorer, or the wise sage. And they can also show up as stories, like the hero's journey, the rags to riches story, or overcoming the monster themes. You'll see these story archetypes repeated over and over in books and movies all the time. Okay? While there are many character archetypes, there are four common archetypes that frequently show up for most people: the saboteur, the victim, the child, and the prostitute. Now, we've already talked about the saboteur and the victim in previous episodes. Today, we're going to talk about the child archetype, your inner child. Now, none of these are good or bad. They're all neutral, and each can help us reflect on our own self-image and how we might show up in the world. Each archetype also has both a shadow and a light side, and I'll be addressing each of the four archetypes in separate podcast episodes. So again, today we're going to talk about the child archetype. So the child archetype is a little bit different from the others in that it's not just one archetype, but several aspects of one. In general, the child archetype makes us conscious of things like safety and innocence and vulnerability. The most prevalent aspects of the child, or the one that's readily identifiable, is the wounded child. Now, that's one that tends to show up for a lot of people. Now, the shadow side of the wounded child often appears within dysfunctional relationships as an adult. Okay? When we identify with the wounded child, the pains we experienced as children, some of the traumas that we experienced, carry over and manifest as neediness or self-pity or blame or resentfulness. And none of these work out very well in adult relationships, okay? On the flip side of that, the wounded child may also bring about awareness and compassion or service to help other wounded children. Okay, so again, there's two sides to all of these different archetypes. Now, I talked about the child having a bunch of different aspects. Okay, so one of them that shows up also frequently, in addition to the wounded child, is the innocent or the magical child. Okay, this is another one of the child archetype aspects that shows up pretty frequently. The innocent child might seem only positive. It's like, oh, that one sounds, kind of light and airy. So the innocent child, as one who, despite bad circumstances, sees only the good or the hope in a situation, like the story of Anne Frank. Okay, for many, her circumstances would give her every right to be angry and cynical, but instead she expressed hope. Her whole story, everything that she wrote in her diary, always seemed to go back to this hopefulness. Okay. Now, obviously, this is a very positive attribute to have, but in its shadow, it can also manifest as refusing to deal with the realities of a situation. Okay. Almost like Peter Pan, if you think about that, who refuses to grow up. There can be a fixation on a fantasy world where everything is okay. Someone else, some adult figure, will fix everything. Okay. So again, the light and the dark side. As children, we enter the world in pure innocence. Okay, we don't know of bad things yet. For that matter, we don't really know good things either. We simply exist and we're taken care of. Okay, we don't have to worry about the evils of the world until something happens to change that. Okay, now we all have bits of all of the child archetypes within us, but some show up more loudly than others. We may not notice our divine child if the orphan child is more dominant. Okay, now I could spend an episode at least on each of the different child aspects, and maybe at some point I will, but not today. So for now, if you'd like to research more about the child archetypes, these are the 6 recognized by most practitioners: the wounded child, the orphan child, the innocent or magical child, the nature child, the divine child, and the eternal child. Okay, so if you'd like to further explore how to use the lessons of the archetypes to move through life's roadblocks, or to tap into how your inner child is slowing you down, schedule a free call with me today. There's a link in the podcast notes as well as on my website, www.thelifewalk.com. In the meantime, feel free to share this podcast with friends and colleagues. I do appreciate all of you helping me share these messages about digging deep into ourselves in order to take our lives to the next level. So thank you again for tuning in, and until next episode, I wish you all the brightest blessings.